All right, so this was a Regents question a handful of years ago, and it's one of the uglier ones they've given because it looks like the answer is obvious, but you really, really have to think about it to get the right, correct answer for the question. All right, and it's one of these questions I hate because if you get the obvious wrong answer, and I'm putting that in finger quotes, you really know almost everything that would be asked of you, but you're not thinking at just the top level, and you get no credit for it. So I hate questions like this. All right. So again, you see parallelogram versus rhombus, and you should be seeing a theme here because this is the most common thing they're going to ask you about. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's the most common one. So I am going to draw a rhombus right here. All right. And I'm going to draw on the diagonals, and then I'm going to start thinking about this as I go down through. Diagonals are perpendicular bisectors of each other. All right. This is 100% a rhombus question. All right. That means rhombus property. So it cannot be 3. All right. Because 3 doesn't have 1. Diagonals bisect the angles from which they're drawn. That is, again, an exact rhombus property. All right. So that means it cannot be number 2 because it has to have Roman numeral 2 in it. All right. So now I have a 50-50 chance here. All right. And I know a ton of information about rhombuses. All right, but then this last question says diagonals form 4 congruent right isosceles triangles. All right, so if I start looking at this, all right, and I start thinking about this, diagonals form 4 congruent right isosceles triangles. That would mean I need a right angle right here. All right, so if I take just this angle right here, okay, it would need to be a right isosceles triangle, which means that these two sides would need to be the same. Now, if you're thinking just about a rhombus, this wouldn't be true because those two are the same and these two are the same, and that is not an isosceles triangle. However, and in this question, the year that it came up, it was a June Regents exam, because if it's not a June Regents exam, I haven't thought about it this much because I don't normally see those Regents exams and go through them with a really, really like fine-tooth comb. All right, ridiculous statement, but that's how you look at something, and it's an older saying about looking at it really closely. The June ones, I look at them really closely because I typically just do them while everyone's doing them when I proctor an exam. And I thought about this for a second, and I was like, wait a second, all right, because I'm always super skeptical of all these questions because they're trying to weed out who really, really knows this stuff from who just knows it pretty well. If I draw a square, which is also a rhombus, all right, a square is a type of rhombus, I have perpendicular diagonals, and then all 4 of these things are isosceles triangles, all right, because the diagonals are congruent and they cut each other in half. So then this is true for a square, but a square is a rhombus. All right. And like I said, I hate questions like this because if you picked number 1, I would argue that you deserve, if that's 2 points, you deserve like 1.8 of the 2 points, but you get none of them. All right. So that's why these questions are just awful questions to have to deal with. All right. But the thing is, we know they're coming. So if we really, really want to score as high as possible on this exam, we have to understand this and we have to be ready for these style of questions. And number 1, we just have to be skeptical of these things. All right. We have to look at these questions and be super, super skeptical.